All right, today I want to be doing something a little different. Many of you know that Godzilla's been around for quite a long time. There's been quite a lot of designs of Godzilla, and it's very hard for me to do like a tier ranking. In fact, the video that I'm about to do is inspired by a tier ranking video because I suck at organizing every single Godzilla suit. So today what I'm going to be doing is going through each era, which each era of Godzilla, if you don't know, is the Showa, 1954 to 75, the Heisei, which is 84 to 95, Millennium, which is 99 to 2004, and then the current era, there's a name for it, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we're going to bunch the current era in with the Japanese and the American. You'll see that later. But what I'm going to be doing with all of those eras is picking only two designs from each era, which I think are the most important. And the reason I'm picking two and not one is because I think some of them, especially like, for example, the Showa era, there's a lot of movies that are in there and it's really hard to pick one, especially because the Showa era changes so much. And same with the Millennium and every one of them. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and pick two today, because I think it's just too hard to just pick one. And it's not doing it justice to just pick one. So without further ado, and without me rambling on a little more, let's get into the Showa era and which ones I think are the most important. All right. These are in no particular order, so 2, 1 doesn't matter. They're just important. First one I'd like to pick today, the 68 through 72 suit. I think this suit is one of the most important because it's in 4 movies of the Showa, and not only is it in 4 movies, but this is really when Godzilla was, to me at least, peak good guy, kid-friendly, and a lot of the Showa is heavily resembled and heavily thought of as kid-friendly. So I had to pick what I thought is the most kid-friendly Godzilla, and that is definitely this suit. Not only was it in 4 movies, and it's in fact it's in the 4 movies, you can see it falling apart towards the end. It's literally coming apart at the arms, so that proves how important it was at one point. But when I think of Showa, and I bet when a lot of people think of Showa, I think this suit. This is one of the first suit that comes to my mind when I think of the representation of the Showa era, and I think a lot of people also feel the same way. Now, that being said, I might have some bias here because 68 used to be one of my favorites. It's not anymore, and one thing I want to point out in this video particularly, a lot of these suits and designs, I don't personally rank the best. I think there's better Showa suits, but I think this one is very well representative of the Showa era. And that's going to go through the rest of them, so keep that in mind. I'm not necessarily picking what's the best. I just think what I'm picking is going to be the most important. And obviously, it's still my opinion. All right, without me rambling on more, let's go into what I think is the second most important suit. And I bet a lot of you saw this one coming. I don't really want to start with this one because I think it's the obvious pick. And to be honest, of course, someone has to pick this. It's 54. The first suit is honestly one of the best of all time. It's crazy how well they nailed this, and there's not much I can say about it that hasn't already been said, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But the reason I think it's so important is, one, it started everything. I mean, this is the suit that started it all. Every single Godzilla suit from this point on is based off this design in some way, shape, or form. Without this suit, there is literally no Godzilla. And I think this list would be absolutely stupid and pointless if you didn't include the first suit. Not only is the first one, but what they were going for in the movie is the evilness of Godzilla. And Godzilla is really born out of a lot of that horror and tragedy that happened in Japan. And this suit really represents that. It's one of the most frightening Godzillas. It's one of the most intimidating Godzillas, one of the most intimidating roars, and this design works so well with that. If there was a different kind of design, honestly, this movie I don't think carries the same weight, and I think that's why this suit is so important. I just cannot believe how well it has been nailed on their first try. So after the show was over, Toho was done with the whole kid-friendly thing. It really went out of control towards the end. 1975 was supposed to be the last Godzilla. Spoiler, if you haven't been around or living under a rock, it wasn't. So we are brought now into the Heisei series. And now, the Heisei series is a little tough, and a lot of people group 89 through 94 into the same era. I'm not doing that. Or not in the same area, in the same ranking. But I'm not going to do that. I think that's kind of a cop-out. I do think that they have the differences. I totally get why people do it because they are really similar. But there are the differences to point out, and I'm not doing that for this video. So what do I think is the first, and again, no order, what do I think is one of the most important suits of the Heisei era? And this was tough because I go back and forth between 89 and 91. And now, just to be clear, those are the same suit. I know that. But it's tough because I think 91's the better suit, but I think I'm going to have to go with 89 as the more important suit. And the reason I say this completely kicks off one of the most iconic and still most thought of Godzilla designs of all time. When Toho references Godzilla or builds a statue, builds a monument, oftentimes the Heisei design is the one that is most represented. And without the drastic changes they made from the 84 design into the 89 design, Heisei Godzilla doesn't exist. The way that they changed his design from the kind of more shorted snout, whole different head shape, whole different body shape, everything about this suit is really a lot different from the 84 suit, and really was such a bold choice by them because I do think the 84 suit's pretty good. And so the fact that they did all this, and then the fact that this suit really started one of the most important eras of Godzilla and one of the most iconic looks of Godzilla, you absolutely have to put 89 there. Again, I think it was improved upon. I think 91, they made it even better. And so you could have thrown that in this list as well. But the fact that 91 is so much based off of 89, I think I had to put 89 as it being more important because, again, without 89, then you don't have 91 to even build off of it. So just to pick the one that started it all, that's what I'm going with there. All right, what's next? Again, I think this is kind of an easy choice. A lot of you are probably expecting this, but it's going to be Detsugoji 95, Burning Godzilla, whatever you want to call it. Again, kind of an easy pick. Not a lot I can say about this that hasn't already been said. You know what it is. I know what it is. Everybody knows what it is. It's one of the most popular Godzilla designs, especially one of the most popular designs in the Godzilla Sofubi market. Everything like that. This Godzilla is everywhere. It is genuinely the most unique Godzilla design ever. There has been nothing like this at all. And it was such a great choice to put that burning glow, the lights inside, and really just makes one of the craziest looking Godzillas. It's a great movie on top of that. And it ends what I think is the greatest era of Godzilla in the Heisei. We're going to move on to the next era, the Millennium. That's right. Now, the Millennium, I'm going to be honest, weird era. I don't really understand why they had to just, reboot every time. I don't like that at all. I'm not gonna let my biases here, but I do think the Millennium kind of is a weird choice. And I don't want to do this at all. In my next one, there's gonna be something I never thought I would put on a list of any kind, but we're not gonna start with that now. We're gonna start with the one that was the more clear choice to me. And I have to go with 99. Again, I don't think it's the best in the era, but I think this most represents the Millennium. And again, it's kind of the same argument that I made for 89. And without this suit, now you don't really have the design kind of going forward to 2002 and 2003. I'm clumping the 99 and 2000 really together, even though there's slight differences. I'm mostly going to be talking about 99 though. Kind of kicks off what I think of when I think Millennium. I instantly think of 2000 or 99. And with all of its exaggerated features, I really pinpoint that to the 2000s. The 2000s was all over the place, these exaggerated colors, exaggerated everything. And I think it is just so important also here to the culture around the time. I think that's really important to include in a ranking because it's really, you can see where the suit designs came from and you can really tell where the time frame was, and which does mean it hasn't aged very well. I do think this screams 2000s, and that can be a good or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But again, this is just the most 2000s looking Godzilla ever, and I think just because of that, I had to put it in the most important. All right. So here's the one that pains me. I never thought that I'd include this next Godzilla in one of my lists. The reason is because I personally really do not like the design I'm about to talk about. I think it's very overrated in the Godzilla community. It's going to be a super hot take, but GMK. I do not understand this suit. I think it's good for what it does, but I don't get why it's so well loved. And just to get it out of the way and get my personal preference and say why, I think it's the beer gut Godzilla. I think it's a very strange looking design. But besides the point, you're probably wondering, if you don't like it, why the hell did you put it on the list? Well, I have to put it on here because, again, just being involved with the Godzilla community, I've seen which ones are the most talked about, and I've personally seen like the hype around this one, and generally it is one of the better movies from the Heisei. This isn't the Heisei, from the Millennium. That's why I'm including it here, because it is genuinely and generally regarded as a very well-made movie of the Millennium, and it's honestly one of the most thought of movies of the Millennium era. And just because of that, I'm putting it in there as the most important design. Going back to my point for 1954, if the same thing stands, this movie needed this Godzilla, even though I don't like it, and it totally changed the game. It's, again, one of the most unique Godzillas ever, and it totally changed the game for how Godzillas were designed by the white eyes and really the beefier look, whether you like that or not. And without that, This movie doesn't make as much sense because Godzilla in this movie is like a ghost or like a spirit of old soldiers. You know the story, I'm not going to go into that. But without this design, it really doesn't give that much emphasis on that. And I really do think this movie needed a design like that. Maybe they could have gone a little less with the beer gut, personal opinion. But I do think that this suit goes so well with what it was trying to do, and just because of those reasons and why it's so well talked about is why I'm putting it at the next most important on my Millennium list. It's time to talk about the modern, and the way I'm going to talk about that is we're going to, well, first of all, let me get this out of the way. I have a really bad habit of calling these suits. I know they're not suits. I know they are CGI. So if I say suits, ignore it. I'm talking about design here. But the suits, I just did it. I just was talking about it and I just did it. Oh my gosh. Okay, well anyway, I'd like to talk about is Godzilla 2014. Now this design had to be good. This was honestly could have completely broken the MonsterVerse if this design was bad. The only other Godzilla that America had ever seen was 98. It definitely isn't highly regarded in the Godzilla community. Zilla, as he's a good design on itself, not a great Godzilla design, and therefore no other movie came out for the next, what is that, 16 years? You can tell right there. A design genuinely does matter when you're trying to break through an audience. So back to my point with 2014, if this Godzilla doesn't look like Godzilla, I have no idea what the trajectory of the MonsterVerse from there on out is like. And the fact that this Godzilla is so much like Godzilla helped this movie so much. American audience were finally introduced to an actual Godzilla and what Godzilla is meant to be. And I think that's why I absolutely had to include this on my list. Again, the same points from before. I think this design is improved upon, especially in King of Monsters. Without that design and without that, you don't have all this, so I can't put that one there. 2014 is the one that started all the American legendary, whatever, MonsterVerse. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. A lot of all of that, I think, rode so highly on what Godzilla looked like in there. And again, what I saw this do for American audiences at the time, I was 14, blew my mind. And we had already had an American Godzilla, so that didn't change anything, but this one did. I really think this one changed everything for American audiences and really led the way for what was to come. And so that's why I have to put this in my most important list. All right, so the next one's kind of tough because really the only two that I was going through my mind was Shin Godzilla and -1. They both do completely different things, so it was really hard to pick. Just for cultural significance and overall what the movie did, I have to pick -1. This was one of the craziest times to be a Godzilla fan and blew everyone's expectations out of the water. I'm going to talk about the design first, and then I'm going to go a little bit in the movie as well, because I think this is just as important. But this design, to me, always takes in a lot of other designs from whatever era it might be. I've always personally seen a lot of Heisei in this design. I think it's great to have a movie that goes back to the beginning almost. This movie is set even before 54, so the fact that it brings in all these elements to so many Godzillas to restart, I think is so great. This Godzilla also made another bold choice by going back down to kind of human level. It was easier for them to do it in this movie because the buildings at the time period the movie is set in are smaller. But still, a bold choice to shrink Godzilla down, and it is such a good design. And again, the same stuff applies that I've said before with the 2014 stuff, is that this movie, instead of introducing American audiences to American, Hollywood, because even though 2014 did a lot, it was still very America. This movie absolutely introduced a ton of people into the Japanese Godzilla world. And this design was such a great introduction for those people because, like I said, it combined so many elements of other Godzillas and then improved even further upon that. And just with the design in the movie, I had so many friends who really could have cared less about Godzilla. Now watching every Showa movie with me, I had multiple friends almost watch every single Godzilla film with me. So, I mean, just for that fact, this is probably the second most important design ever behind the 54 suit if I were to do a ranking, solely because of the absolute impact that it had over here in American culture, even won awards, everything about this. And the fact they did it on such a low budget just makes it even more impressive, and I could keep going on and on and on about this, but I'm not going to because I do need to end this video. But my point being is, that even though I don't think some of these are the greatest of the era, I think it's really important to highlight what each of these suits did for its time. So whether that you had the design that was really going after the good guy, kid-friendly Godzilla, the evil-looking Godzillas, the menacing Godzillas, introducing him to a new audience, that is what's so important about these designs, and that's really why I wanted to go over this video. Now, some of you probably really disagree with me, and you know what? That is okay, because we can all have our own opinions, and to be honest, I want to hear your opinion. So if I missed anything, if you think that I'm crazy for my opinions with the GMK one, I imagine there's probably going to be some crazy opinions, even though I include it in the list. But if I missed one that you really think should have been on here, let's have a discussion about it, and so you can comment down below. But besides that, when I hit 500 subscribers, about 100 away, I will be reacting to my old YouTube channel. That's right, I had an old Godzilla YouTube channel that probably none of you know about. It is still on YouTube to this day. For a hint, I have a buzz cut and I'm 14. So if one of you finds that, I'll be absolutely amazed. I mean, there's no way. I'm challenging you now. There's no way that one of you finds this. But I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I hope this was informative and I hope it was entertaining. But until next time, see you later, G-Friends.